Well, welcome. Welcome to another Wednesday virtual beer tasting event. Today we're going to be tasting Bit of Beaver, our English bitter. It's the original first brewing we ever did as Foggy Noggin. We'll wait and hold this and save it for the first taste in a minute. Let's talk about a little bit about the beer style, a little history on it. So, 1992 is when I started home brewing, and quickly realized that I didn't know what I was doing, and I wanted to really focus on one beer style and figure out how to make a good beer. And so I decided I was going to make an English bitter. About 100 tries, Bit of Beaver was born. I think it was 1996 is when that first batch, which is the same recipe we're still using today. It's a great beer. It's a session ale, and we'll get into a little more details on that as we proceed on this. So, bitter. Bitter is probably the most common beer you're going to find in an English pub environment. The bitter family has bitter. I call it English bitter because people don't really understand what bitters mean. It's not a very bitter beer at all. They have bitter, special bitter, and they have extra special bitter, or ESB as it's commonly known as. The bitter is going to be the lowest alcohol, the lowest hoppiness. It's going to be the beer that you would drink for a whole session. A session being after lunch before dinner or after dinner before bed in a pub. You could still walk home and you could still function because you're drinking a lower alcohol beer. But it's got enough flavor to keep you interested. It's a social drink, so you can play your darts, play card game, or just talk with your friends. The Bit of Beaver English Bitter is a 3.4% alcohol beer. 3.4% is a pretty low alcohol in today's beer world, but you don't need really anything more than about 2.5% to get the effects of having the alcohol and the taste. At 34 IBUs, which is significant in a low alcohol beer like that, but they're all British hops. British hops give you a much more earthy, gentle hoppy character and more of a drying tone to it than they do as far as that drying bitterness that takes your taste buds out of your mouth. And so let's go over the recipe on this beer. So we have 3 malts. So it's a pretty simple beer, nothing fancy on it at all. Crisp is our, as you know, if you listen to these before, is our favorite maltster. They do all floor malting in England. 89% of the malt bill is their crisp Maris Otter. And for our half barrel batch, that's 18 pounds. And then we use Crystal 77, which is a sweeter, caramelized type of malt. 1.5 pounds, which gives about 7% of the malt bill. And then we finish it off with 3/4 of a pound, or 4% of the malt bill, is biscuit malt. And it comes from Belgium, and we like the Castle brand Belgian style biscuit. It gives us that nice, almost a little perfumey flavor to open up the character of the beer. We mash all that in at 154 degrees, which is a pretty moderate mid temperature to give us long enough chain sugars to have a little body to it and keep some of that residual sweetness there, but also low enough that it gives a nice clean pull through on converting those sugars to alcohol. We hit the 1038 as our original gravity. We let it ferment down to 1014. It's critical in a beer like this, don't let it go below 1014, because you want some of that sweetness still in there. It plays well with the malt character and that dry finish. And the color on it is 8.7, which gives you a nice, I don't know if it really picks up the color that well in this picture, but I would call it a nice light copper color, or light bronze, whatever you'd like to see and call it. But it's pretty clear. We don't do a long lagering of it, but we do a week at 32 degrees, which gives you a nice clean color to it. It's only cold condition. There's no filtering on it. We do it in growler fills, and we do also bottle it in 22-ounce bottles. Growlers are $16 for a half gallon, and the 22-ounce bottle is $7. And the bottle looks like this. It's got that fancy FN logo on it, English style bitter. And I don't think everything's backwards here, but if you take your phone and put it into a mirror, it'll look just perfect. I'm sure you all have a mirror right next to you so you can read it correctly. Or you just come to the taste room or order it and do curbside pickup of it this weekend, and you can have a bottle and you can read it when you're at home drinking it, because there's a good story on the side of it too. We call this the beer that started the whole Foggy Noggin experience, because it's the first beer we bottled, the first beer we brewed back in January of 2010. So that was the first commercial brewing of this beer. Let's talk about the hops. So we've got 3 different hops. We're using UK Fuggles, grown in the East Kent Valley, and we're using Willamette hops, grown in Yakima Valley, and we're using UK Goldings, again from the East Kent Valley in England. At 60 minutes in the boil, left in the boil, we put 4 ounces of the UK Fuggles because it's 23.6% IBUs. That's where we're getting most of our bitterness out of it. At 30 minutes left, we're putting another 1.5 ounces, giving us 4.5 IBUs. Also at 30 minutes, we're putting in 1.5 of Willamette, and that's giving us 4.6 IBUs. And then with 5 minutes left in the boil, we're putting 2 ounces of the UK Goldings, giving us 1.4 IBUs. It's also giving us a nice aroma and flavor character at that point as well. The water we profile this is London water, which really is, since they have a lot of limestone in their water source, it's softening up the water just a little bit, and we charcoal filter all of our water too, so there's no chlorine in it. Not too dissimilar from our current water that we would have if we didn't do any modifications to it. Well, let's give it a taste. If you have some at home, I encourage you to drink it. I know that 2 people have commented they have a glass of this and they are going to taste it with me. So I'd love to get your comments on it and see if we batch up or if we have some differences and we can enjoy a little conversation about it. I smell a nice, delightful sweetness, and that's giving me some of those unfermented sugars that the 1014 is so important that you have a little of that sweetness on it. Wow. The thing I like about this beer so much is you get that upfront sweet aroma to it, slight earthy hoppiness character to it. The first thing on your taste buds is a delicious sweet maltiness, almost like having some fresh bread out of the oven. That wonderful doughy kind of character to it. Back of my tongue, I'm getting a little bit of it, of like a nice thick slice of white farmhouse bread that's been toasted lightly. And then on the back end, I'm getting this just delicious, long, lingering bitterness that it goes on for a long time. For a 3.4% beer, there's a lot of complexity to it here. I also pick up, I think, we're using Fuller's yeast, which is from Chiswick, England, and I'm picking up in the back of my tongue a little, maybe a little apricot flavor from the yeast fruity characteristics. It's lightly carbonated, 1.5 volume, so the carbonation is going to be hiding any flavors. It's going to allow everything to be opened up. I'm drinking this probably about 45 degrees. I took it out, the bottle out of the refrigerator, about 20 minutes before I opened it. I think as this progressing, I think as it warms up to about 50 degrees, the full flavor is going to come out on it. It's got delightful, though. I think that bready, biscuity, doughy kind of character in the flavor in the malt bill, and I like the yeast of that little bit of a apricot kind of a background flavor from the yeast, and then the hops play pretty neutral in it, except for they give you that really nice dry finishing bitterness that makes you really want to drink more, because when you dry out your mouth, it makes your mouth thirsty for another drink. So 3.4%, so being a bitter, we have a special bitter that'll be releasing next week, and it should be our virtual beer of the week. It's 4.2%. And so you see that you're adding about a little bit less than 1% of ABV to get to that next level of special bitter. So you're going to have a little bit more alcohol, a little more hop character to it. And then you get to the ESB, which would be the strongest, the most flavorful of them all. And those are going to run in the 5% range, 5 to 5.5% typically. And there'll be a little bit more bitter and a little bit more alcohol, and probably a little bit darker because you're gonna have more malts in there, adding more color to it. It's a fun family of beers to try it. If you've never really done it, it's hard to find around here too many of the different bitter beers to have. But if you go to a really good bottle shop, you might be able to find some British beers that have their bitters, special bitters and ESBs, and do a blind tasting, or do just a open tasting, and you can see those characters and intensities and different things that come out of those different beers. I think it's really, really good. It's a beer you could really drink all night, because 3.4, you're going to get full from having that much beer, but you're not going to have the effects of the alcohol that are going to affect your senses, your sensory, and you're not going to feel bad tomorrow. This is a really good beer to drink several pints of, and you really will feel good the next day. Delicious. So the people that are drinking it as we're watching, I don't know, maybe you could share some of your tasting notes on it, and I'll read them off as they come through, and maybe we can have some little dialogue on that. It is the first beer we ever did. We try to have it on tap all the time. There's only been a couple of times it's not been on tap in our tasting room. It's a beer we intend to always have on tap. We have a lot of customers, and that's their go-to beer, and they get growler fill every week, and they'd be very disappointed if they didn't have that beer on, because it is such a delicious beer. It's a go-to. It's a comfort level beer. It's one that you know, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is. You can always have a couple pints, and you're going to be fine. You're going to be able to not worry about tomorrow. You're not going to worry about if you got a little work to do while you're at home or something, because it's a lower alcohol beer, but it gives you so much enjoyable flavors on it. It's just it's a fantastic beer. And I think this one in Christmas Duck, our porter, the other one that we have on tap, and that was our second beer we brewed, and they're both on tap all the time, and really, really, really long longevity with our customers, loyal following on them. They're great beers. So if you look at this, you look at the colors on this label, and you go, well, what is that? There's a little orange, it's a little black, a little white, beaver in the name. What does that have to do with? Well, if you didn't know it, I'm an Oregon State Beaver, and it's to honor the Beavers. And we have a lot of beers that are named after Pac-12 schools. And if we bottle them, we use their color profile for the label. It's a handsome bottle. That logo really pops. I think having the orange wings on it just really add to the look on it. So Zach says he really gets a long tasting experience in the mouth after sipping it. And he says, just like Jim said, that's me, he says it finishes by turning from malty, sweet to bitter, which is refreshing, and like I said, it makes you want to drink more. Well, that's the whole intention. And I'm glad that you picked up on those notes, and Zach, and hope you're enjoying it. It's also another beer that, it does, so if you ever like to blend beers, this is a really good beer to use as a blend base. So use this as a neutral beer and you want to add some more flavors, this goes really well with our Christmas Duck Porter, the two of those together. 50-50, we call it Civil War. That's what they call the game when they play each other. But you get it kind of softens the effect of the porter, the roastiness, and a little more sweetness is added to it, and it just brings out a nice harmonious balance to it. So if you might, I would pick up a growler of this beer, maybe 2 growlers, and try, things that you think you like at home, maybe other breweries' beers, and maybe try blending these together. It's a fun thing to do. Beer blending is really an enjoyable thing. It's good with a lot of people. So maybe if you had a bunch of people come over when we can get over this COVID separation, distancing, staying 6 feet apart. But when we can get back together, this would be a good beer to have people bring their favorite beers and then try blending this one with it. So that Maris Otter, which is the 90% of the malt bill, it's got that really good bready, biscuity flavor to it, and it's powerful. It's the predominant malt character on this is that Maris Otter. It gives you that bready, doughy, just rich deliciousness of bread. I mean, one of the best smells you ever smell is when you smell bread being baked, and it's just that's what I think of when I think of this beer. Is not only do you get to smell it, you get to taste it. And it's that fresh bread kind of feeling coming into your mouth and the experience. Really, really good. Just that touch of that crystal is adding that little sweetness to it. And also, since we didn't let it finish all of its fermentation out, we took it out of the fermenter before it dried the beer out too much. And that adds a little of that sweetness. And that biscuit malt, and if you think about it, if you're drinking it right now, think about it as you take a drink and then right after you swallow, take a deep breath through your nose and then blow out through your mouth, and you can kind of taste some of that perfumey flavors that biscuit malt has. And it's a really, really, really good combination to go with that breadiness and then that little perfumey just deliciousness. And then, there is a lot of hops in here. So we've got 9 ounces of hops in a half barrel batch of a 3.4% beer, but at 34 IBUs, that it's really a well-balanced beer. There's not one aspect of it that takes over and is cloyingly taking over or annoying and taken away from the other subtleties. I think you can taste everything. I could taste the yeast, which my description of the yeast is the apricot tones. I can taste the malt, that bready, doughy, biscuity. I can taste the hop effects of it being that nice dryness to it, and a little bit of the earthy smells too when you smell the beer. And it's warming up. I'm even getting more flavor. So I really think 50 degrees is where you're really going to enjoy this beer the most. And again, it does taste really, glassware really does make a difference. This being an English Nonic style pint glass, is 20 ounces. This is a proper pint. But you look at the top, it's wider on the top than it is on the bottom. This little ridge here is the character of what Nonic means. I think it's because as the glass gets kind of wet, it helps so it doesn't slip out of your hand. But truly, having that big opening lets you really get your nose in there. And it opens up that beer. And it's like letting a wine breathe. This is letting the beer breathe. It just really lets you have a great sensory experience by smelling this beer through that top big wide opening. And the malts are getting more profound as it's warming up. They're getting more developed. They're getting more interesting, I think. I don't taste any warmth from alcohol. 3.4 is a pretty low alcohol level, so I don't really get that warmth. I think for me, it takes about almost 5.5% to 6% before it tastes a little bit of heat from the alcohol in your back of your tongue. But this one, there's no. If you don't like that taste of alcohol, this is not the one that's going to be. Oh, I could taste the alcohol. It's very, very gentle, very calm. And again, so it's a 90%, 89% crisp Maris Otter, 7% crisp Crystal 77, and 4% Castle Biscuit is the malt bill. Mashed in 154 degrees. We make sure on this one it's a very loose mash. We have about 1.3 quarts per pound of grain. We don't want this to be real thick. We want this to have an ability for it to really convert really well. We want all the flavors to come out. London water, we sparge it out. Sparge temp is at 170. It raises the temp of the whole mash to about 160 when we're doing it. Key ingredient for any homebrewers out there is you want your mash water, your sparging water, to be warmer than your mash, because the sugars want to cling on to the husk grains, and by having a little bit warmer, it makes sure you strip all the sugars out and you collect it in your boil kettle so you can boil all those sugars and get the full effect of that beer and not leave it in the mash tun, because you're not getting anything out of it. You leave it in the mash tun unless you're feeding. The one that's going to get the appreciation is if you're feeding your livestock or your animals, because they'll have all that. But why not take as much as you can and let them have the leftovers. They'll still be happy. The hops, we've got UK Fuggles. There's 2 editions of those. 4 ounces at 60 minutes and 1.5 ounces at 30. And then again on a half barrel batch. And at 30 minutes, we're also doing 1.5 ounces of Willamette hops. UK Goldings are put in right at the 5-minute left in the boil, and we put in 2 ounces. And the result is 34 IBUs in this beer. No dry hopping. Cold condition for a week at 32 degrees. And it gives you this nice dark golden, light bronze, just very delightful look. But I'll tell you, the whole experience of the smell and the taste and the aftertaste and that whole gambit and the total experience is one of the most satisfying beers you would ever have. If you haven't had Bitter Beaver, I really encourage you to try it. It's such a classic beer. I have a lot of people who come as regular customers to our tasting room that are from Britain, and they say it's the closest thing they've ever had to what they remember what it was like when they drank in England. It really, truly is an English bitter. It's got a full flavor profile instead of a watered-down character that a lot of the brewers, they say, that attempt to make them. They just make a beer and they kind of split it with water to take the alcohol level down. This is brewed specifically for the style. It's brewed to be a 3.4% beer. There's no added water. This is the result of a careful, hands-on experience to give you what I think is what I would be proud to serve this beer in England, right against any other English bitter made from the English homeland. So this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're doing curbside pickup. You can get this 22-ounce bottle for $7, and you can get half-gallon growlers, 64 ounces, for $16. We only are filling Foggy Noggin logo growlers, so if you've got one, we just swap it out and give you a clean, sanitized one. If you don't, they're $7, but think about the investment you made in your future, because you just swap it out every week after that, and you get a nice, clean, sanitized one. And if you don't have Foggy Noggin glassware, you're going to want to drink it in this. You're going to want to get the full experience. You're going to want to really get that profile to come out. You're going to want to be able to stick your nose in there and get the full experience on that beer. You get a lot of questions. Why don't you can your beer? Well, why don't you drink water out of cans? Why do you use glass? Why do you drink your favorite scotch or bourbon or tequila in a glass and not out of a can? It's because the bottle is superior. The bottle has no additional flavors that it adds. It doesn't distract anything because it doesn't impart any flavors. It doesn't impart anything other than purely what was put in here and it's poured into the next glass. Also, by capping it with a cap, if you have a bigger beer, you get the ability to allow it to age with proper oxidation, which is really important in aging beers. And on a beer like this, though, you don't want this to age. 3.4% doesn't have a real long shelf life. You want to drink that pretty fresh. You know, I would say you want to drink it in the next, within 3, 4, 6 weeks, something like that. You want it fresh. If you buy a growler or a bottle, drink them in the next few weeks. Don't hang on to them for a year or 2 years. It's not going to hold up well. It doesn't have enough alcohol for that withstanding the time. So I say go glass. So does Veronica, who just says go glass. I don't buy beer in cans because I don't agree with it. I don't think they taste as good as they do when they're in glass. And I will buy a bottle of beer. I'll buy a growler of beer. But the best is when you can get it freshly poured right out of the tap, right in the glass. But we can't do that right now. Hopefully soon we can come back together and we can get together and drink beer in the tasting room. So, what else we got going on? We have the curbside pickup this weekend, 4 to 5, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You just order from foggynogginbrewing.com. Go to the beer tab. All the instructions are there. If you run into problems, you always give us a call at 206-553-9223. And you can order merchandise as well. Great time to get Father's Day presents. You can get Foggy Noggin hats, you can get t-shirts, you can get glassware, deck of cards, all those kinds of cool things. Go to our website and kind of peruse around what we have available. And then tomorrow night, because I know that you are looking for something to do, we have our virtual happy half hour. At 5:30, you get to hear a little piano singing and just have a good old time. Facebook Live, Thursdays at 5:30, and you won't want to miss that. That is one of my favorite times of the week. But next week, next Wednesday, if everything goes well, it's going to be a Little Lucy. It's going to be our special bitter. It's going to be our beer of the week, and we'll do a virtual tasting of that. Unfortunately, it's not ready for growler fills this weekend, so you're not going to be able to participate with us on the tasting and have that beer in your hand and taste with us now. But I don't know. Zach, I like your comment. A little bit of beaver makes all beers better. That's a nice thing to say. I think blending beers is fun, but I think that everybody has their own taste, and I think experiencing things and trying things, it opens your horizon, and I think you realize that you like to try things and you like new experiences, and it's a good time. And Stephanie says it tastes really good. I think it tastes really good too, and I'm going to finish this. I'm going to let you guys go, and we will see you tomorrow night at 5:30 for our virtual happy half hour, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 6 o'clock for our virtual tasting of Foggy Noggin's featured Effin' Beer of the Week. Cheers, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.